Hi, this is Ned Siegfried from Siegfried and Jensen. As proud sponsors of BeliefCast, we hope you are inspired by Todd's weekly podcasts, which contain so many courageous stories of recovery and personal growth. Remember, it's not what happened in the past that matters, it's what happens in the future. We invite you all to work hard and be optimistic about your future. Enjoy today's podcast.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Todd Sylvester with the Todd Inspires BeliefCast. Thank you for tuning in again. I love you guys. I appreciate your support more than you know. Keep sharing all these episodes because we're saving lives and we're just making a difference. And I've had some amazing guests on, and today's going to be no different. I do need to give a shout out to our sponsors, Wasatch Recovery, Siegfried and Jensen, Thread Wallets, Living Recovery Interventions, and my good friend Drew Peterson. And we have a bunch of silent sponsors too. You know who you are, so thank you for supporting this BeliefCast. It really does make a difference, and it allows us to get this out to more people. So thank you for believing in me. It means more than you know. Today is going to be an awesome episode because we're joined by Chalese Stevens. Chalese, thanks for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Yes, she is the author of Finding 40, A Mother's Walk with Grief. We're going to obviously talk about how this even came about and when you lost your son, and we're going to get into that. And it's a very touching and heartfelt story. You talk a lot about grief and hope and how to get through these things, and you really are an inspiration.
Well, thank you.
I mean, honestly, the way you carry yourself and the way you've taken this tragedy and turned it into doing good for others, which has obviously helped you as well. But you're doing so much for other people. So I'm just excited. This is great to have you on.
I'm excited too.
So why don't we start and just kind of tell us where you grew up and maybe a little bit about your childhood.
All right. Well, I was born in Turlock, California. Not many people know where that is. So if you do know, then
I don't know where that is either.
It's about an hour and a half south of Sacramento.
Okay.
So yeah, anyway, Central California. But I was born there. And then when I was just barely before I turned 5, we moved to Idaho because my dad got a job transfer. Okay. And so I grew up, I'm the oldest in my family. I have 2 younger brothers. And I was always that kid in the neighborhood that was starting clubs and starting like all of these things. And, you know, I always had to be the president, and I was gathering everyone together. But I love to have fun. I used to race the BMX bikes. I had a little purple elf bike. And so I did that when I was really young. Yeah. I was like 6.
I love it.
But yeah, I was that girl that through all the hard times. Then there were quite a few hard times in my childhood growing up, but I was always trying to make my family laugh, and I would put on little shows for them and, you know, entertain my brothers and help my mom and all those things and just try to put a smile on people's face.
Yeah. Well, you definitely have a lot of energy and passion, and I know that's probably one of the things that makes you so successful at what you're doing now. And so were you always like this as a kid, even like just this confident, you know, kind of energetic person?
I always had confidence and energy, but I mean, there were I like to say, like, I'm the most confident what's the word I'm looking for? Self-conscious person that you'll ever meet.
Right. Okay.
But like, I mean, I fought through a lot of that. I always loved to perform and show off and do all of that stuff. So I think that has carried with me for my whole life. Yeah. But I mean, it definitely, I like to talk about a lot of my story just because I know that it helps people. Yeah. And it makes me relatable, and I'm not afraid to put myself out there.
Yeah. Well, that vulnerability that you show is really inspiring to me. And I know that's what people want to hear. That basically what I'm hearing you say is you own your story, you know, and you've been through a lot, and we're going to get into something really specific here. You know, in 2004, you faced your worst nightmare where you lost your 4-year-old son when he drowned at a local swimming pool. Yeah. I have kids of my own. I have a granddaughter who's 4. I can't even imagine what that is even like. I mean, it's one of those things I think every parent is afraid of, something like that happening. But you've gone through it. And But, you know, from that day forward, you have transformed your journey into like healing your mind, body, and soul. You talk about grief and hope. And so tell us about that day, if that's okay. I know this is a really sensitive subject, but just kind of tell us what happened and kind of what was going on.
So my friend and I she took her grandkids and I took my Caleb up to a water park, and we, you know, we're having fun with the kids and everything like that. And I'll make it brief, but all of a sudden everybody was getting out of the pool, and I looked over because I was with the other mom that was there with her kids, and Caleb had been playing with her kids, and she had, you know, older kids and stuff. But it was a really packed pool. This particular place actually sold 3 times the amount of season passes for that year.
Oh, okay.
And
it was really crowded. Yeah.
And they only had 2 lifeguards. And so I had just been talking to her. We were getting ready to leave. Is what was happening, which of course is that moment of like, if we left 5 minutes earlier, 5 minutes, if not 2. But I'm pretty sure what happened, because it's all kind of a blur, but we're pretty sure what happened was that there was some older kids jumping into the pool, and he was on the edge of it and knocked him out, basically.
Oh, okay.
And so everybody, when I finally realized that everybody was getting out of the pool, and life kind of slowed down to slow motion. Yeah. And I looked over and I was like, well, there's no way that's my son. Is what I said to myself, because that's obviously I knew, but that was my inner voice. And I started walking over there, and I was like, oh my gosh. And I usually when traumatic things happen, I'm very good at switching into autopilot mode and just handling the situation. I was a complete wreck. Oh man. And luckily there was a nurse that was there that was able to, she jumped in the pool because he was on the side of it. She jumped into the pool and started to coach the lifeguards through the CPR because they were 16 and 17. One had been there for 2 weeks. One had been there for 2 days. Oh man. And these are kids. My daughter, my bonus daughter is about to turn 16, and thinking about her going through, they don't know. They don't know. And so I was so grateful, because my brain, even though I was certified in CPR and all of this stuff, when it's your kid, you're not there. You're not there. And so I was trying to stay calm, and my other friend that was there, she's like, try to sing him his favorite song, and I couldn't remember the words, and I was just sitting there, and I remember he turned his head over and threw up, and I was like, oh good, he's fine. Yeah. He's gonna be fine. And the nurse was like, no, we can't feel a heartbeat, keep going. And I was like, what? And again, I don't remember a lot of this, but what my friend told me, because she was my sounding board at that point. Sure. She, they couldn't get a line in him. They couldn't get anything like that. The water park itself didn't have a defibrillator on site, which is legal. It was there. It's by law. You're supposed to have one. That, and they didn't have one. By the time the paramedics and everyone showed up, they couldn't get a line in. They couldn't. So they life flighted him. And normally the parents get to go with them, or the one parent. At least one. I wasn't able to go. So we had to drive down to Primary Children's Hospital, 20 minutes of agonizing. And of course it was the one day I forgot my cell phone. And so I didn't have a cell phone. And this was 18 years ago too. So, I mean, there was it was just so crazy. And when I walked into the Primary Children's, that I was waiting there for, it seemed like forever, but I'm sure it was only minutes. But they looked over and they were like, can we help you? And I was like, my son was just life flighted here. And they were like, oh, okay, just a minute. And the nurse came out and she's like, come back with me. And so I was like, okay, he's okay then, right? Because they were like, put her in consultation room number 5 or whatever. And then they're like, no, he's still in the room. And I was like, oh, good, he's okay then. Yeah. And she was like, no. And I collapsed. And it was just devastating. And I ended up being able to go and hold him. And I held him for, it seemed like hours, but I don't I don't know how long
Yeah,
it
you
was,
don't
and it
even know.
doesn't matter.
Doesn't
But
matter. Yeah.
you know, I had people show up, but I looked at my friend. I'm like, I can't call and tell. Like, how do you tell somebody that your
Yeah,
son is dead?
Yeah. What do you say?
Like, and I was like, because, you know, there's that fear of judgment of like, now I like, you know, when you always, as a mom, you always feel like you're doing something wrong. But when you lose a child in your care,
Yeah.
it's like there's nothing that heals that except for time.
Yeah.
So that's the day.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. I can't even imagine, like I said earlier, and anyone listening to this is just, you know, I'm sure they're feeling their hearts right now going, oh my goodness, this is, you know, this is unbelievable. You know, so you go through this, obviously it's a very difficult, unimaginable thing. I know this is a hard question, but you know, what was it like, you know, weeks, months, years after, like how are you trying to get through this? Because again, you're heavy grief, which I know you talk a lot about in your book, but let's talk about that for a minute.
Well, honestly, it was sometimes one breath at a time, if I could even take it. Like
Jeez.
that, when it first happens, like you have everybody around you. Everybody's here to console you and to love on you and everything like that. And you know, literally help feed me at one point because I wasn't eating. And so they, like, there was, you know, so many things. I knew that one day, because I kept getting like, you get a lot of gifts and books and all these things. And the books that I got, they were like how to get through grief, how to do this. And I'm like, you know, in my grieving head, I knew that there was no one could tell me how I'm supposed to get through this, especially if you've never been through it.
Sure. Right.
And I wasn't able to really, I closed myself off because normally, like we were talking about earlier, I'm very outgoing. I surround myself with people. I'm very involved.
Sure. Yeah.
And at this point, I shut everyone out.
Yeah.
And the dark part that I talk about now, that I didn't talk about for years and years and years and years, is that I had a small group of people that I did a lot of drugs.
Okay.
And a lot of drinking.
Yeah.
And because they would call me, a friend of mine, he would call me on Thursday night. And from Thursday to Monday morning, I could disappear.
Yeah.
And that's what I did for a while. And it didn't last for a long time. Because I also had my friend that was with me. I lived with her. I lived in her basement with my son.
Yeah.
And so she would call me home and get me to do things and guilt trip me into doing okay, we got to paint your room. Like, you know, you got to come home and paint it. I'm going to do this myself, but I'd really like it if you were there.
Yeah.
And she was definitely my rock. And the people that I was with, they knew my son too. And they loved him very much as well. And that was their way of coping. And they weren't doing it to be malicious and mean. And to this day, I mean, it's been, like I said, it will be 18 years in June. Yeah. To this day, we're close. Like, we don't always talk because we've gone our separate ways, and, you know, but there is that bond that we all share. And it's not like some drug dealer was like taking me in. Like, it wasn't that. It was their only way to know how to comfort and love and support me. Yeah. And I truly believe that it helped save me, though.
Yeah, I was thinking what a blessing to have this friend who was just doing their best. Like, let's keep you busy. Let's have you do something.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe those are just those little things, just enough to get you through the next day.
Yep.
You know, to get you to get through whatever you're feeling in that moment. So
exactly.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
And yeah, we all need friends like that in those moments, especially. And it's great to hear that you guys are still tight. And that's amazing.
Yeah, it's really cool. And the better part of that story, because that is a story that, like I said, I pushed away all my family. I didn't want to have that, because I was always the protector in my family. I was always the fixer. I was always the one that everyone would come to when they needed something. And that was the one time in my life where I was like, no. And so to this day, we're still healing those relationships because of that.
Yeah.
And
again, anyone can understand what you've been through. Like, I can see why that happened.
Yeah.
But yeah, wow. Well, you talk a lot about healing, your mind, body, and soul. Can you explain that? Because explain what that looks like, and what was that journey like for you, and how did you get to that point where you finally go, okay, I'm going to do something different. I'm done. Not that you were done grieving, but it's like, I'm going to do something with this.
Done self-medicating.
Yes. Yeah.
So the most beautiful experience happened, and devastating at the same time, actually. My friend that I was telling you about, that we went with her granddaughters, she had a daughter that was my age about, and her daughter was in the Peace Corps in Africa, and she got into a really terrible accident and was life flighted to South Africa. And that's a cool story in and of itself. I tell the whole story in my book, but long story short, I was like, I have nothing here. I wasn't married. I didn't have any other kids. She was my sounding board. Yeah. And so I'm like, I'm going with you, because there's no way that what happened to me is going to happen to you if I have anything to do with it.
Right. Yeah. I like that.
And so I flew out there with her and spent 11 weeks in Africa, basically healing this girl. And I didn't know what I was doing, because I didn't really know what energy work was. I just did what felt natural, and we would go, and I knew, I did CNA work and things like that, so I knew physical therapy, and we would make sure she was moving, because she was paralyzed, and she's not anymore. Because we were there working her every day, and I would read to her and I would sing to her, and in the ICU unit there, everybody's kind of in the same room, and it made an impact on some of the other people. One of the wives, actually, of her husband, who had a brain injury, that was in a coma, said every time I came in, his heart rate would start going, and he knew, and he was ready for me to read my story or sing my song or whatever.
Wow, that's amazing.
And I also there started writing more. I started writing my kids' books that I also write. Yes. And I was able to detach from my life and be there for her. And I mean, I made some friends there, and and even went on a few dates with this guy, and because it was separating myself from reality. And being in an ICU unit 24/7 is very exhausting. Oh man. And so we were able to do that, though, and truly I feel that that's what started propelling me towards who I am now. Was that part. And all of my story is my story, and it's made a difference, and it's made me, again, relatable to other people who are going through that. But the fact that I was able to go so quickly through it, and and then when I came home, I mean, there were ups and downs too for that, but it showed me what I was capable of doing 3 months later, after my son died. And to be able to do something like that was okay, this is, I guess, what I'm meant to do. And I felt my son through the whole thing, and he was very close to me, and I'm like, okay, I hear you. This is where I'm supposed to be. I'm supposed to be healing, helping other people heal. So,
I tell my clients all the time that I work with that life happens for us. Mm-hmm. And even, something tragic like this led you to something that beautiful experience in South Africa, and to do what you're doing now. So you have this realization, you're like, you know what, this is what I should be doing. This is what I need to be doing. So tell us what you started doing, on a personal level, because obviously you're helping, but what did you do individually to help you at that point?
So at that point, it's healing is messy. It's a messy process, and it's never okay, I'm on this road of let's climb up the ladder. There's a lot of broken rings on that ladder, you know? And, so it's been, like I said, it'll be 18 years in June. And this whole time, it's never been just an uphill climb. It's Sometimes you climb a little bit, you camp out for a little bit,
Yeah.
you get over that boulder the next morning if you get up the next morning.
Right. Yeah, totally.
And you fight through the demons and all those things, and it's definitely that journey. And when I look back, I'm like, man, I could have been so much further along in my journey if I only did blah blah blah. But when I really look back at my journey, because it took me 15 years to write my book, because I just couldn't do it. But I knew that every time I wrote in my journal, or every time I wrote a poem, or every time I wrote something, because writing is my release. Writing is my biggest
your therapy,
healer. Of anything. Every time I did something like that, I knew what it was meant to be. I knew what I was doing it for and working towards. And finally, I was like, I can't put this off anymore. Like, it's time. And it was right when COVID hit and everybody was isolated. And I had my book launch on Zoom in May of 2020.
Right in the heart of it, right?
Right in the heart of it. And I was like, here we go. Like, this is time. And I'm not, and that whole process was healing and exhausting in and of itself. Like, and I just got the audio files to put my book on audio tape. And I'm like, oh, I don't know if I can go through this again.
Well, yeah. Being one who's written a book, congratulations, because this is no easy thing.
Yeah.
It is, right. At least, I mean, it took me 7 years to launch my first book. It is difficult.
Yeah.
And, but I love how you're like, I don't care. It's May of 2020. We're still doing this.
Yep.
And you did it. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah. How's the reception been with your book?
Oh, it's been fantastic. I mean, I knew it's a book for people that need it.
Yeah.
And it's not just for the loss of a child, even though that's my biggest audience.
Yeah.
But everybody who reads it, it's meant something, and it's relatable, and it's exactly what I meant it to be. Because like I said, the world doesn't need another book of how to go through the steps of grief, because that's not even, it's not a stepping process. Like, it's like there's the stages, but it's not what they don't tell you is that it's not like, first you're going to feel this and then you're going to feel that. No, it's not. It's all, sometimes all of it in one.
Yeah. And then it feels like it goes away and then it comes back.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
And
it's I remember there were times when I'm like, oh, I think I'm through this process. Like, obviously, like, I'm still sad, but I'm like, I'm not grieving anymore.
Yeah.
But what I've realized is that grief is a lifelong process.
Yeah.
And you don't always feel the heaviness of it, but sometimes you do again. Sometimes you go through the whole entire grief stage again.
Yeah.
And like I know I keep saying it's 18 years. It'll be 18 years since he's passed in June. And every year I do something for him, but I'm like, but it's been 18 years. And so now he's graduated angel school. And so we're going to have a whole graduation ceremony for him.
Oh, wow.
But, he would have been 22 this year, turning 23 in October. And at this point, I think that I'm kind of going through the phases that I would as a mom. And again, like I have a lot of work done too. Like, I do a lot of healing work and energy work on myself too.
Yeah, sure.
And one of the sessions I had was, at this point he would be, it was when he would be 21.
Yeah.
And honestly, he wouldn't want his mom around all the time. And I'm like,
that's true.
And at first I was offended by that. I was like, no, I don't have to like do anything. And then I'm like, but that helps him age with me.
Yeah. Okay.
That makes it more of a mortal, like, okay, like we can separate a little bit more. And the grief I felt for losing my little boy is now transitioned.
Okay.
And it's all about that growth in myself and with him and as an angel, because I couldn't do half the things that I do, on a spiritual level without him.
Right.
And he leads me to so many things. And honestly, it's one of the reasons why I think that I did lose him was not just because I had work to do, but because we had work to do.
Yeah.
And as a human, as mortal, you can't do that when you're a little kid growing up. Like so he was meant for bigger things that he needed to do that he couldn't do in his human form.
Wow. Very well said. I love that you said you do something for him every year.
Mm-hmm.
He's graduating angel school. I've never heard that before. I think that's fantastic though.
Yeah.
Is that just like part of process also that you've kind of come up with to help you heal and continue to grow from this?
Oh, I'm sure. Like I love celebrating. I absolutely love celebrating things.
I can
and
tell.
So I'm like, if there's a reason to celebrate, let's do it.
Let's do it. Yeah.
and so, but I love timelines. And I'm a big timeline person. And
Okay.
for me, it does help me go through the different phases, because it's healing me. Like he doesn't need to be healed.
Right.
Like there's
Sure.
it's all for me.
It's
like
all for
whether
you.
or not he even exists, like if you're spiritual or not, for me, he does, because I need that.
Yeah.
But for other people who don't believe that, like whatever they need to do to get through it is perfectly fine. But for me, and I've even said this, I'm like, even if it's not true, even if what I feel is just the memory of him, that still makes it real to me, because that's what I need to get through it, because otherwise I wouldn't be here. I can guarantee that.
Yeah.
Because during that time, like there were several times when I thought about suicide. There were several times that I thought, like, what's the point? Like it's too hard.
Yeah.
And some days are too hard.
That was going to be my next question, is if you ever had those kind of thoughts, and obviously here we are talking about it.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. And that's, I think one thing that the drugs did get me through was like, it's too hard, so I get to escape, but I'm going to escape in this way and not forever, because I need to find a way to honor my son.
Okay. I like that, because I was wondering if you were concerned that you wouldn't be able to stop drinking or doing the drugs or whatever it was you were using. But I love what you said. You had to find a way to honor him, because doing drugs and blowing up your life isn't honoring him.
No.
Correct?
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I've always been a person that believes in fighting for what you have.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to go too much into this part of my past or my childhood, but it was pretty rough. Okay. And there were times when I would look at my mom, and I would always be impressed on how she fought through the things that she dealt with. She was she was abused by my dad, and there were times that I was like, you should leave. I was that kid at a little and being like, what are you still doing here, Mom? Like you need to be more than this. Like, I'll help you. And we did run away to the women's shelter a couple of times, and we did do things, and I would protect my brothers because my mom couldn't. And not that they like, and that was the weird thing. Like, I was never physically abused as a child. My brothers a little bit, but not like bad.
Right. Yeah.
But there were a lot of demons that my dad was facing, and he doesn't have, we don't have a very strong relationship now, because I had to get out of that. And, and I think my biggest battle, including the drugs, and that's where a lot of it came in, was allowing myself to find my way out of toxic behaviors and relationships. And I battled a lot of those. And to this day, like I'm finally in a healthy relationship. But we found this great quote that said, everybody says how amazing it is when you get out of toxic relationships, but nobody tells you how hard it is to get into a healthy relationship after being in a toxic one.
Oh yeah.
And that hit me hard, because I'm like, it is like, you're a mirror to each other when you want to do healthy things, you want to have healthy behaviors, but you've never known how to do that. And so you got to figure it out. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And again, there's the ladder that you're like, why are all these rungs broken?
It's like, where is it?
I guess we got to fix it. Yeah. Good thing he's a handyman.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah. Wow. No. And again, it's interesting how, as I'm listening to your story, you go back to, when you were describing your childhood, how you were the planner and you were the president of the clubs and organizing and being, basically, like a go-getter and getting things done. I see how that's how you are now even. Yeah. Like, it's interesting how you've kind of taken the rings of this, and you're like, I'm going to do the best with this. I'm going to honor my son, and I'm going to make this work. Mm-hmm. And it's almost like you had those skills when you were this little kid.
Yeah. And well, and that's, that's interesting that you say that, because everything that we do, you know, you're always told you have everything that it takes to be what you're meant to be inside of you.
Yep.
And you really grow with this, but you have to learn, you have to nurture, you have to really figure out what those are and go back to those moments of like, how am I being successful, and what strengths do I have and what weaknesses do I have, and how can we grow our strengths and manage our weaknesses.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I feel like during my journey, even though I'm not where I want to be, whatever that means anymore now.
Yeah.
But because honestly, like I've gotten to a point where I know I'm exactly where I'm meant to be. And there's even a little bit of fear of like, okay, like things are really taking off. Oh, am I ready for this? But everything that I've been through has gotten me to this point. And even jobs and those relationships and the kids and their relationships now, like all of this has brought me here. And it's exactly where I'm supposed to be, because for whatever reason for whatever people I'm supposed to influence or impact, they're exactly where they need to be to hear me now.
Yeah. Right.
And they can relate to the drugs. They can relate to the alcohol. They can relate to not being where they want to be, or having, you know, a 6-figure income business and all of those things. And it's like, I'm 43 years old and I finally feel like I'm starting to really live my life.
Yeah. I love it. Wow. Finding 40. Right?
Finding 40.
So I know this is a tough question because you've learned many lessons through this whole thing for the last 18 years of what you've been through, obviously, and even stuff that you went through as a child that you mentioned. What are some of the biggest lessons that stand out to you through this whole process now that here we are sitting here this many years later? What are some of the big lessons that just really stand out to you?
That is always a hard question, because every time I answer it differently.
Yeah, and I know there's a lot of lessons around you. Yeah, sure.
But I truly believe that what I talked about with finding those strengths that you have and really allowing them to impact your life and to grow with them and to really nurture those, instead of focusing on your weaknesses or the things that you're doing wrong, or the things that you should have, would have, could have done better.
Yeah, right.
Because we all have those. And it's those moments of when you're shooting on yourself.
Yeah.
To take a step back and really find the gratitude in what you have and those strengths that you've been able to nurture, or those people that you've been able to impact. And that truly, when I'm in those places, and I still have dark moments. Sure. I still have dark, I battle with depression and anxiety and all those things too. And I know that when I'm in those places, that it's really hard sometimes to focus on those positive things.
Yeah, right.
And sometimes I have to tell myself, like, it's just okay. It's okay to be sad today.
Yeah.
Or it's okay to be a raging lunatic to your children because they're not listening to you.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Because they know, kids and animals and all those things, they know if you get mad at them for one thing, that you're still going to love them.
Yeah.
And they always come back.
Yeah.
And they always are like, oh, mom's so mad at me. But then at the end of the day, they're the ones that need your hugs and kisses goodnight.
Exactly.
And so I think what I've learned is that giving yourself those moments too, and being able to say, you know what, this is a weakness of mine and it's okay.
Yeah. Wow. I love that. You mentioned gratitude, and I think a lot of people who are listening to this right now go, how can she find gratitude through all this? How can you do that? And so maybe answer that, how did you find gratitude, and why is gratitude so important to you?
Gratitude is everything to me. I even say in my book, and I've said to people before, I'm not grateful that I lost my son. That. Right. That is, but you know what's weird is that I can't even say that if I could take it all back, I would at this point, because for one, I can't, and I've become very good about living in the now.
Yeah.
But But also, if I did, what would I not have experienced today? And that makes me grateful for the tragedy. Again, not for losing my son.
No, I know what
but
you mean.
in the tragedy of my life and being able to work through so much.
Yeah.
And I know that I've impacted so many people just by being who I am. And again, not saying that because like I'm something special. I'm not. Well, we all are. We all are something special.
Yep.
But we all also, if I were to not share my story, so many people wouldn't be able to share theirs.
Yeah.
Or to have any hope that one day maybe they could feel a little bit better about life.
Yeah.
Or hang on just one more day. And so gratitude is everything to me, because it's even in my darkest moments, there's always something to smile about.
Yeah. And that's also probably what helps to have hope through this as well, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they kind of go hand in hand, I would imagine. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. Having hope is the key to so many things. Just, there's always, the sun is always going to come up. Sometimes when the sun comes up, it's cloudy and it doesn't feel like it's like the rays of sunshine are coming in.
Yeah.
But that's not supposed to be every day for your life either.
Yeah.
If you were always sifting through life, just happy and whatever, like it's fine.
Yeah.
Well, we all know what FINE stands for. So.
Yes, we do. And if you don't, you can look it up.
Yeah, exactly. But when, even in nature, things are messy, things are dark sometimes.
Yeah.
Things are stormy.
Yeah.
And that's why with my nonprofit that I have now, it's called Rainy Days Foundation, because we all have those dark moments, those rainy days that we just need to get through.
Yeah.
But having that hope that the sun will eventually come out, or a rainbow or something.
Yeah. Well, that was going to be the next question. So you're right on. So let's talk about your foundation. Tell us why you created it and what's the purpose of it.
So with my foundation, I actually created it about, it was 2015.
Okay.
So, wow, time flies.
Yeah, I know. Here we are.
When I first started, I always knew that I needed to do something in his name. When I first started it, I thought it was going to be helping moms through loss and grief.
Yeah.
Because that is a huge part. Then it became when I, knowing that I went to Africa, and I've helped other friends whose kids were in the hospital or who's, going through a lot of trials and things like that. I was like, well, maybe it's trauma and tragedy that I'm helping people through.
Yeah.
And then almost, it'll be 4 years, I think, this month, is when I met my first heart kid. And he was the same age as my youngest son is now. Okay. And he just got a little flu, and they took him in because it wasn't really going away. Something wasn't right. And mom's intuition was, she took him to the emergency room, and he ended up having to have a heart transplant.
Wow.
And I barely even knew this family. Like, it was just a fluke that I met them.
Yeah.
Like I said, I don't believe that there are any true accidents. Everything happens for a reason.
For a reason, yeah.
But as I was watching this kid's journey and kind of being a part of it on the sidelines, I was like, well, maybe trauma and tragedy, like that's a part of it. And then I realized, which is so, and not that I had forgotten this part, but it's something that I suppressed. It wasn't a part of me that healed yet. And it had been 13 years. And my son, when he died, was able to donate his heart valves. Everything else he couldn't. Okay. But he was able to donate his heart valves. And it saved another child. And I don't know who this child was. And at that time, I was 25 years old. Yeah. So getting this news and still in my depths of grief, I was like, okay, good for you. And I know this sounds horrible.
Well, it's almost like you didn't want to hear that because you're still
because I'm
hurting.
Still grieving. Yeah, I'm like, why did he have to go? Yeah. Like, why was that? I was still in the depths of the why and the needing to, like,
for sure.
It was awful. And so then I kind of just, we got a little token thing, and I went and put it on his grave, and I was like, well, there you go, buddy. Like, you saved somebody. And then I didn't think about it again. 13 years later, I was talking to the dad of this kid, and I was like, oh my gosh, you're waiting, because he was talking about this, about like, I feel so horrible because there was a kid, ironically, that drowned, and on the TV when his son was waiting for a heart. And he was like, it makes me feel so guilty because I wonder if it would be a good match. Oh. And I was like, and it hit me, and I was like, huh, okay, this is something we're going to be healing from. But I told him, I said, but my healer side came out, and I was like, whoever you get this heart from, make sure to honor them every day.
Yeah.
Because every time you look at your son, you're going to see them too.
For sure.
And he was like, I'm on the same page. And then at that point, like, and I talked to the mom about it, and like, we really they were open to this conversation, which was beautiful. And I needed it, and they needed it. And then I met another heart family and another heart family. And I was like, I think my whole mission now is to help heal these little hearts. Yeah. And help them with the transition too. Like, and even if it's just me being there, because I help bring in the fun and the sunshine and a little bit of normalcy in their life.
Sure.
And we've had superhero parties, and we've had like, we went to the Luminaria and got family pictures for them, and like things like that I am able to do, give them zoo passes so they can make those memories, because the memories to me are so important.
Yeah. Right.
And these moms though too, there's about 20 moms in my group, and they're grieving too. Yeah. Because every mom who has a baby is thinking that they want their child to grow up normal, whatever that means.
Yeah. Right.
And healthy and strong and all of those things. No mom has a baby thinking that they're going to have to deal with this for the rest of their life. Right. Even once they heal from it, there's still repercussions. There's still medicine. There's still every time they get a cold, for sure, they wonder if they have to take them to the ER. Yeah. Like all of these things. And I'm like, this is where I belong. Like, this is my family. Yeah. And they help me as much as I help them. And it's so nice to have that, to feel included, to feel like once they go home from the hospital, because they have, again, all that support. But it's after, when they're home and they're alone, that they don't have that connection or that network as much as they did in the hospital or whatever. Like, sometimes people want to be that, but it's been really cool to be able to be that. And since my whole thing is giving hope and making memories and connection, that's what I'm doing for them. Yeah. And it's really powerful. And I even tried, I'm like, well, maybe I need to like not do this and do something else. Maybe I'm not there. And every one of the moms are like, no, you can't leave us now. I'm like, but they're like, no.
Yeah. Right.
So, and we've become really good friends, and it's again, that family. And even though when you go, just like the friends that I had, like even when you go your separate ways, you always have that moment of, you did this for me, even if it was that one time when you gave me a hug and told me that I can make it till tomorrow. Yeah. Like that was everything to me that day.
Dang. That is so beautiful that you're doing that. And wow, that just puts life in perspective when you say it like that. Those hugs, choking me up there. Well, you're doing a lot of great things. You've written this book. You want to make a difference. I know that you're obviously very passionate about that. What are some of your future plans? And then maybe if you could let our listeners know, how can they get your book, and how can they get a hold of you if they have a question for you, or if they want to know more about your foundation? Yeah. Just give us all that information.
So I have a couple of different webs. You can get my book on Amazon.com or Barnes & Noble. Okay. And you can find me on my website. I have ChaleseTalks.com and then rainydaysfoundation.com. And you can contact me any of those ways. Chalese at rainydaysfoundation.org. You can send me an email, or I'm on Facebook. I'm all over social media. So I guess you're going to put up.
Yes, this will all be in the show notes that people can link to for sure. But
Yeah, and I'm always there. I'm always able to, even if you want to connect and talk and just get out your story. I love listening to people's stories because I know how much they impact other people, and they impact me. Like, there's never a time when I don't hear somebody's story and be like, wow, that really just changed something in the way, even if it's the way I view something or look at something, or I can tell the story to somebody else that's like, that needs to hear it.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful thing. So I'm always willing to meet new people. I am really big on women's advocacy too, and empowering women and helping them heal, because a lot of the heart kids, they all have moms, and it's the mom group that we really focus on. And I love being a part of women empowerment. And it's really cool because I'm just starting the Women in Business chapter in the West Jordan Chamber.
Oh, right on.
Yeah, that just is happening this week. And I'm getting involved with a website called Win-Win Women. And it's just all about empowering other women and being there, because so many women don't feel like what they have is worth sharing.
Yeah.
And a lot of people also, like, they have so much that they can offer the world, and they don't feel like they're enough.
Yeah.
And I want to help people understand that they are. Wow. And it's their story that makes them that way, no matter what it is. It doesn't have to be loss. But it's so much of what we deal with, whether it's losing a job, losing a grandparent. That we just lost another grandparent this week too. And like, grief is something that we all deal with. And it's just moving forward and moving through that, and not feeling like you need to suppress it or hide that. It's to share it and to help others.
Wow. Beautifully said. Thank you for sharing that. I love what you said earlier too, which we mentioned about how you honor your son every year, Caleb, with these things that you're doing. I would say you're honoring him by doing this today with me. So thank you. And
thank you.
And I believe that he's here with us, and it's just really just heart touching the way you handled this pain and stuff, and this tragedy you've been through. It's a great example to all of us. And so I'm glad that our listeners got to hear your story, because you are proof that as hard as it can be, you can get through this. Obviously you had help along the way, and that's why you're here, is to help. So I encourage all of our listeners to reach out to you if they're struggling. Go get your book, check out your websites and things like that, and maybe get involved in some of these groups that you're in and that kind of thing. So, but yeah, we need more people like you who have been through tough times, who have made it through it, and now you're being vulnerable and sharing back with everybody. I think it's fantastic.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, very neat. Well, thank you for taking some time with us today.
Absolutely.
Honestly, it really means a lot. It's taken us a minute to finally connect. We've had one thing after the other, it seems like, getting in the way, but like we talked about earlier, this timing is perfect for this. And I really believe we're going to save some lives by what you've shared today. And again, listeners, go check out our book, Finding 40, A Mother's Walk with Grief. And she's amazing.
Thank you.
Really, truly, I love your energy and love your passion about what you're doing. And you really are someone that we need to look up to. So, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Well, there you go, folks. I told you this was going to be another amazing episode. Please reach out to her, and please check out her website. And, if you can't get a hold of her for some reason, reach out to me, and I'll make sure you guys get lined up. But I love you guys. Again, thanks to our sponsors. Thank you for tuning in. And believing in this whole cause that we're doing here. It's just fantastic. I mean, I just found out we're like ranked in the top 100 in mental health in the world.
Oh, that's so awesome.
Blows my mind.
That's amazing.
But it's because it's people like you coming on and just being vulnerable and sharing, because this is relatable, because so many people have gone through this. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
You're amazing. And I love how you honor your son every year by doing these kind of things. So thank you.
Thank you.
Love you guys. Thanks for tuning in. And until next time.